Hi all, this is Skate and welcome to update 3.5. Wargaming have very kindly given me early access to this so I can share with you guys lots of cool information on what we have to expect. Now the first thing you'll see is I'm having a good flick through this event, the event entitled New Moon. Now, just in case my overly Chinese introduction, we'll say, didn't give it away, and those oh so cool Chinese tanks didn't give it away, this is all in aid of celebrating Chinese New Year. And what better way to celebrate than with some great big new Chinese guns to play with. I will get onto them in a moment because I know that's pretty much what everybody wants to see, but first, the event. I imagine 90% of people looking at this right now will recognize the format. This is effectively a grinding event. We've had one like this for Dracula and Helsing, and we had one like this for Steve. Steve, by the way, is the Swedish tank, however it's just easier to call him Steve. This event, although it is a grinding event, is much, much better than the previous ones. There is tons more prizes at each tier. The observant among us would have already noticed that one of the tanks is a tier 7 and one is a tier 8. Which means the tier 7 tank will be easier, or a smaller grind, obviously making the tier 8 heavy tank a harder grind. And even better, the first 3 tiers are combined. As with the previous event, you'd have your first tier, then it would branch off. On this one, you've got a bit more time to make a decision on what you want. So I've mentioned there'll be extra prizes included in this event, obviously including your premium time, your free experience, and the new boosters which are coming in 3.5. I will be doing a separate video to discuss the boosters in depth because, well, I have a habit of rabbiting on far too much about the topics. I don't want to get sidetracked on that one, but there's a lot of boosters in here, and at the final tier, with the tanks, you will also get a big pack of boosters. All the boosters. So, what do we need to do to get to these beautiful machines? Well, we need to collect Lunar Charms, and we need to collect Dragon Fangs. Lunar Charms you will get very easily. They are directly linked to your base XP, and as a result of that, the more games you play, you'll naturally just keep accruing these. So don't stress about the Lunar Charms. What you want to be looking at and prioritizing, concentrating on anyway, is the Dragon Fangs. You will earn Dragon Fangs by completing missions. Obviously, the higher the tier vehicle you use, the more Dragon Fangs you will earn. I went out to do a mission and to have a look how many Dragon Fangs you will actually get. I completed a very easy tier 8 mission for 1050, I believe, and that tier 9 mission there would give you 2100. Basically, if you can tolerate tier 10, stay at tier 10, but nobody cares what I'm saying right now because all they're looking at is that tank in the background. Now, to me, this tank looks like the love child of a T28 prototype and a T21. This tank is the Blaze WZ 135G FT, and I would love to know who named this thing. And I flat out refuse to call this tank by its full name throughout the entire video because I'll have to keep looking down and checking my paper. So from here on out, it's Blaze. Now what we're going to do is run through the stats while we have a look at Blaze in action. Now I have fitted mine with a gun rammer and a gun lane drive, which gives us a rate of fire of 4.91. That gives us a total DPM of 1964, which isn't the greatest at tier 7. There's some very nasty DPM machines like an E25 or a Comet, but this thing isn't really designed to be played up close and personal. It's designed to play sniper, relocate, sniper, relocate, and so on and so forth. Now this tank does carry a 122mm gun, which is the same as you will get on the tier 8 WZ 112, which is the other tank up for grabs, and also on things like the ISU. It is also available on other tanks like the SU-152. What this means is at tier 7 you get exceptionally good penetration. 175mm of penetration. And if that isn't enough, you can just switch to the APCR for 217mm of penetration. But as a result, it's got the very good penetration. You can see the bloom there, 0.39 is the gun dispersion, which isn't the greatest, and a 5.3 aiming time. It's not... Yeah, it's not the greatest when it comes to accuracy. But to balance that, it has great mobility. It goes 50 kilometers per hour, and as you can see, it's a very small tank, which means its camo value is going to be fantastic. The two major downsides to this tank. One, it doesn't have a fully rotating turret. The turret will only traverse 45 degrees either way. And two, although the armor, it's got 75mm of armor by the way on the front, it's just enough to stop most tanks' HE, but it's open topped. So a lot of people are still going to launch HE and still do fantastic damage to you. The other thing is the ammo rack is huge. So it is open top, and the ammo rack you can actually see when you look straight down in the turret. So if this thing is annoying you, you are close enough, just launch some HE in its turret. If you're driving this thing and you want to avoid that, well, try and stay as long range as possible. So that's why I'd say this is a sniper. Now, although it has 75mm on the front, it only has 30 on the rear and 30 on the sides. But the side is a very hard target to hit because, as you can see, it's pretty much all track. So as a result, launching HE into the side of this thing, well, you're more than likely going to hit track. Basically, the armor is just enough to make sure you don't get HE'd to death all the time. But the armor is still very weak, and as a result, anything that fires a shell in your general direction is going to penetrate you. So get yourself a camo net, and get yourself in a bush. And use that mobility to run from spot to spot to make sure you stay in the battle and you stay useful to your team. Here's my flat out honest opinion though. It's not a bad tank, but it's not the tank I'm going to be going for. Not in any shape or form. This is the conciliation prize. This is second place to the WZ-112. And I do like how Wargaming have done that, actually. Is you've got the choice of basically going for a tier 8 tank or going for a tier 7 tank. If you're not going to have enough time to go for the tier 8, which is what everyone should be pushing for, well, here's your conciliation prize. And in this in this battle, I get far too cocky, thinking I can tuck up next to this stupid Ferdy and basically run around with this Panther, but the Panther does get me before I get him. Now, the main event. This is what everybody probably wants to see the most. This is the WZ-112, and it is an absolute monster. I love it. For all those people that love the Defender, the WZ-112 is coming for you. For all those people who couldn't get an IS-3 Defender, doesn't matter anymore, get one of these. I really can't describe how much I like this tank. I'm actually going to go as far as saying it is better than a Defender. Not because it's more OP or anything like that, it's more reliable, it's more user-friendly. And because it doesn't have that pike, it is fantastic at angling. Let me just give you some perspectives here. Without angling, the IS-6, the front hull, has 100mm of armor. The IS-3, I believe, has 110. I did just check. This has 121, and it's a lot easier to angle. The IS-6 has 150mm of armor on its turret, and the IS-3 has 220, but it does have that 30mm weak spot right in the middle. This has a nice even 240mm of armor on the turret. So it is a very well armored tank, and as you can see from the way it moves, it's not slow either. And it's also not, I would actually say it's no slower or no worse in track traverse or acceleration than the IS-6. So it's a very mobile heavy tank. And then the icing on the cake for this tank is the gun. It's quite reliable. It's 122mm, the same as you would get on the previous Blaze tank, and the same as you would get on the IS-3. Except this one comes with a rate of fire of 5.26. This is with my rammer, remember. 175mm of pen, 270 with the heat, not APCR on this. Obviously we're looking 400 damage as we always are with the 122mm. And the main advantage this has over the Defender is it doesn't have to scurry off and hide for over 20 seconds while it's reloading a clip. This to me feels better in every single way, and so much better than the Defender. I know there are a lot of die-hard fans for the Defender out there, but I much prefer this. And I don't know if it's my imagination, I'm pretty sure it's not. But this tank has a very, very low silhouette. Look at the height of it compared to the T-44 in front. And in fact, even in comparison to that VK, I don't even think we come above its hull. Which pretty much means anything, even with gun depression, is going to have one hell of a time trying to penetrate this, because all they're going to be staring at, as per this guy, is the turret. The back end of this, though, is unless you keep moving, those hatches on the top are weak spots, so they can get penetrated quite easily if you are just sitting still right in front, which is why you can see me wiggling back and forth there. To be honest, I can't imagine that bot was smart enough to aim for the hatches anyway, but you'd still play the tank like you'd expect to play it on the live server. All in all, my straight answer for this tank is hell yes please. I'm definitely getting this one. And I quite like the camo scheme on it as well. The colours are pretty cool, and those dragons aren't in your face, they're not vulgar. So yeah, I like it. I have no complaints about this tank. Usually I'll always point out a negative on a tank. Now I'm not saying this tank is perfect, it's not ridiculously fast, but it's a heavy tank, it's got the armour. Its gun isn't the most accurate, but it's a heavy tank. It's not meant to be accurate, it's meant to be designed to point it at someone's face and shoot. Here's another example of what I was mentioning about the silhouette, and obviously the tank being very low. Coming up to the train carriage, if we park up in front of the train carriage, I can just see over it, which means they can't see my hull, or if they can, there is a tiny amount of it they can see. Now the other thing I'd say is look at the angle I was using against that Centurion there. That's the sort of angle you want to be using this tank. Because it doesn't have the pike, you can use that angle very effectively, and it will massively increase the effective thickness of your frontal armour. Now one thing I will say is this is meant to be just a preview, it's not my usual guide, and as a result, as soon as this thing goes live and as soon as 3.5 is live, I am going to start work on a guide for this tank. So with that in mind, stay tuned for that one, and if you're not subscribed, please do so you can share in the fun and hopefully the enjoyable content. Now, there's a couple of things I haven't mentioned about 3.5, or I barely touched on. For example, this is the new Dead Rail map, which was in the training rooms and is now going to go live instead of the other one. I'm intending on doing a full video on that because I'm quite opinionated on this topic. So I'll have an interesting video out on that one. And the other thing was those boosters. There's a lot of interesting things about those boosters, so I'm going to run through them as well. Now that is pretty much where I'm going to wrap this video up. The only one final point which makes me laugh. Everybody always complains in World of Tanks and in World of Tanks Blitz and console Russian bias. Well, this tank is technically ripped off from Russian tanks, because that's pretty much how the Chinese did it. They got hold of Russian tanks, ripped off the designs, improved certain things. And what are people going to say? Damn stupid Russian bias. Oh, wait, no. It's Chinese. I know that's a technicality. It's basically built off a Russian tank. But this thing is a monster. And I, for one, am quite excited. Well, I'm actually really excited. And I can't wait for this thing to go in the game. But I'm looking forward to the fact that we're going to have a Chinese tank which can take on the Russian heavy tanks head-to-head confidently with no concerns. And I put this part in just for giggles, In case you're wondering, how have you got all those medals without a mastery? Oh, no. It is there, there's just too many medals to fit on the screen. Anyway, thank you all for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you've enjoyed the tanks, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.